Hey everybody, so you're probably wondering where I am right now. You move in third person.
You're doing great, Emily.
Thanks. This is a public server called... It's not public, is it? This
No.
is a server called Spooncraft. It's... That wasn't a very long fall. This is a server called Spooncraft, which I did not know existed until recently when I joined Mumbo Jumbo's Discord server and found out about it. But now I'm here, and I spent the last, week and a half playing for way too many hours, and I thought that for today's upload, since I've done nothing else, that I would show you what I've been working on. Before I could play on Spooncraft, I had to chat a lot in Mumbo's server because you have to, level up, and when you level up, you get spoons, and you have to have 10 spoons to play on Spooncraft. And that took a few days to get. So I had several days to think about what I was going to do when I finally got on this new server. As I was chatting, some people were talking about building Tesco's, and I was like, Tesco! I love Tesco! I went to visit England back in October, and we went to a Tesco that was next to a Greg's several times the first week, and I thought Tesco was really cool because it was a Tesco Express, so it was this tiny little supermarket. And man, I thought Aldi was small. I didn't know markets could be that small. I thought it was so cool. And so I decided to rip my inspiration straight from that and build literally that exact Tesco and Greg's. So I picked out a spot and I started clearing out an area and looking for the materials that I was going to need, and boy howdy, when I get started, I did not know how much of a challenge this was going to be as a starter base. I had not considered what materials I was using and how difficult they were going to be to acquire. It was easy at first. I mean, as I went down into my mine, deep slate was really easy to find. I went into a lush cave and there was plenty of clay to make into bricks. Diorite is obviously easy to find. So as we got started, it was really easy. In the very beginning, I guess the hardest thing I had to deal with was accidentally staring down an Enderman and having to take shelter in my neighbor's house. I don't think it was until I started to have to gather the quartz that I started to realize that this was going to be a challenge. Showing my face at my neighbors seemed to have gave him the idea to come see what I was up to, and he had the absolute worst timing because I was trying to sort out my claim. They have something on this server where you can claim a set of land and it prevents anyone else from messing with it or taking anything out of your chests. I was erasing mine, which was made of a bunch of different chunks, and starting it over so I'd have one big chunk because I didn't really understand how they worked at first, so I was correcting it. And during this time was when my neighbor came to visit, and that made me really nervous, but he didn't steal or break anything, so it was fine. Here's me getting sand to smelt for the windows. While I was on this endeavor, I found a cave, and I was drawn into it by promising ores, although I had a little bit of a scare when I accidentally fell into my neighbor's claim and wasn't sure if I was going to be able to get out. But I was fine. I got out. I'm good. As my quartz resources were depleting, I decided I needed to go to the shopping district and see if anyone was selling the stuff, because it was just going to be overwhelming to have to get all of that by hand. Still pretty poor at this point, but surely I could find some kind of deal that would at least help me along. So I went to check out the shopping district for the first time. I had only ever seen the shopping district from the mini-map, so I knew it was in a mycelium district, and I knew that right at the front of the bridge there was going to be a Tesco. I had not seen this Tesco yet. This isn't my Tesco, this is someone else's Tesco. I want you to remember what I said about what I liked about Tesco as you witness this site. As I took in this quote-unquote Tesco, I checked all of the villagers, but unfortunately none of them were selling quartz. So I moved on. All I mustered the confidence to say in chat was, this has Costco vibes. Definitely not what I fell in love with Tesco over. I checked all the other shops, and while there were some cool things going on, no one was selling quartz, so I was out of luck. Back from my fruitless endeavor, I decided to shift my focus to a small wall I have that's made of wool, and I went out to get some sheep. They had no business fighting me this hard on getting in a pen. So quickly the wall went up and I started to lay down the first bits of concrete as well. But I was interrupted by a night where I was not allowed to sleep. You see, we have a function on this server where if somebody goes to bed, it shows up in the chat, and anyone on the server can just click on that and interrupt it and force it to be nighttime. So every once in a while we'll have a stubborn person who insists it be night, and we just have to sit there no matter what troubles the night is bringing us and just deal with it. Daylight came and I was able to get more of the concrete down and start to shape the front and the sides of the Tesco itself. At this next phase of the build, I begin to realize how much of a pain concrete is to acquire as well. So now we have 3 materials on the list of things that I really should have considered the difficulty of gathering. At this point, I was sick of having nothing enchanted and no nether portal, so I finally went down to bedrock to do something about it. I had hoped to find some diamonds too while I was down there, but for most of the game so far, I have had the worst luck finding diamonds. I have just been able to find nothing. I think for like the whole first week, I had like 7 or 9 diamonds, period. And not for lack of trying. So at last I built my nether portal, finally connected to the rest of the world without having to run halfway across the server. And then I ran halfway across the server, evidently. By now I had gotten myself some sugarcane and some bamboo and things were coming along. Those resources are easy to find because you can just get them at spawn. Someone has a farm there, but even though I had my own nether portal now, the daunting task of getting the sheer amount of quartz that I needed was still, well, daunting. I asked about it in chat. I think I remember asking if anyone had a villager that I could trade with, but I got really lucky and someone actually offered to trade me like several stacks of quartz for a single diamond. It was crazy. Very, very generous. I super appreciate this. This put me forward by a lot. Now, I don't have the chat log in the replay render, but I came here and made this exchange, and then after they gave me the quartz, I don't know how you say the name, Afe? I'm gonna go with Afe. Afe said, like, hang on, I'm changing the price right now. And I was like, oh no. And then they were like, plant these potatoes. And then I thanked them and left. So after I crafted that all up into stairs and burned through it all, I made more progress on the interior of the Tesco. And then I started to think about something I hadn't considered before, which was I have this back area and this upstairs area, which I knew was going to be like an apartment and the space where I actually lived, but I never really planned what it was actually going to look like. So while everything else is pre-planned and loaded up into Lightmatica for me to follow, this is completely on the fly. I'm making it up as I go. I once again grew short on materials, so I went on another mining expedition to collect as much clay and gravel as possible, hoping to also find some iron and maybe some diamonds along the way. To the surface, I made a morsel more progress on the second floor before I needed more wood, and with enough iron, it was now finally time to make an automated smelter. There's a lot of bits throughout this build that I was making very incremental progress on lots of different parts at little bits at a time. So it's really not good material for a time lapse, unfortunately. I'll be honest, when I started recording this, I wasn't planning on making it into a video. I just happened to be recording everything in replay by force of habit, really more than anything else. Just to be clear, this section here is going to be a Greg's. I already mentioned that a Tesco is a market, but if you are not familiar with Greg's, they are a pastry shop. They sell like meat pastries, like sausage rolls or steak bakes. For the first week that I stayed in London, it was like my go-to breakfast spot. It was close by where we lived, and very easy and really tasty. I didn't want to totally strip the beach where I lived, so I went off and stripped someone else's beach. Believe it or not, I ran out of clay again and had to go mining again. It is astoundingly easy to underestimate the astronomical amount of clay that this build requires. I used my concrete to make more progress on the interior of the Tesco. With a bunch of newly chopped oak, I made progress on the second floor as well. Mind you, I still had no idea what the second floor was going to look like. I just knew that that's where I was going to live and that's where all my stuff was going to be, so it at least needed a floor to start. At some point during everything, I accidentally left my sheep pen open and a bunch of them got out and I didn't notice for like a really long time. This is me noticing my sheep got out, finally putting them back in, and bringing some cows so that they have some neighbors. You may think that I'm digging a mine in the nether so that I can upgrade to netherite, but joke's on you, I don't even have diamond. I'm looking for blackstone. I was able to see on the minimap that there was a blue biome close by, so I ran over there and got some wood, which I was going to need for the front of the Greg's. I didn't want to mow down that other person's beach too much, so I went out a little bit further and found another beach to mow down, and I figure I might even come back here because Nobody lives here, and it's sand. Look at all this sand. I can just take it. Now that I have a fancy nether portal, I can use that to get to the shopping district instead of traversing the land. Went there looking to see if anyone was trading sea lanterns, another thing in my build that's really difficult to get early game. I did not find anything. While quartz is something that's annoying to get on my own, but I can, sea lanterns are something that's very difficult. I was so desperate to find some way to get sea lanterns from someone else. Surely somewhere someone had to have made a farm and be selling them or be willing to trade or something. It was over the course of a few different days, actually, I think, that I had asked a few times, hoping at some point someone would be online who could help me, but for all my searching, it's just too early game. I resigned myself. I said, all right, it's not going to look right, but this is a starter base. In the meantime, I might have to settle for shroom lights and glowstone. It's not what I need, but until I get that, it's gonna have to do. The Greg's logo is a lovely bright cyan color, and cyan is a mixture of green and blue, kind of. And where do you get green? You get it from cactus. I went to the desert to get some cactus. So we lay out a concrete powder, we solidify it, we mine it, it's all ready to go, and it doesn't match the schematic. Why doesn't it match the schematic? That's cyan, right? That's light blue. Close. Back at it again with the correct cool color, I was finally able to build the front of the Greg sign. At this point, I knew I wanted to have some sort of lettering on the fronts of the buildings, but I had no idea how I was going to do that. So for now, we just have solid block colors. Later, when I went mining again, I came across a mine shaft. I was excited because I found a spider spawner, which I know I can turn into a farm. But when I was attacked by a spider after putting torches on it, I assumed that I was not going to be able to stop spiders from spawning and reflexively I just broke the spawner. That was not the right choice, but that's what I did. It didn't occur to me until later that that spider was probably just still there, like it hadn't just spawned. But what's done is done. So I found a mesa on the minimap, went and got myself some terracotta, and finally slapped down a permanent place for my farm, which has moved like 3 or 4 times. The sort of inspiration for this was I thought that these upstairs apartments will have these like balconies or terraces or whatever you want to call them, and they'll often have rooftop gardens, and so I was trying to simulate something sort of like that. Before you say anything, I know it's obnoxious that I use 2 types of wood instead of committing to one. I'm sorry, but it's going to stay like that for a long time. Now this is exciting because we finally get to see the second floor start to take shape. What I'm putting in here are the edges and the bases of the windows. Some of the glass is even starting to go in at this point. This is one of my favorite things about this type of architecture is the way that you have commercial and residential areas so tightly intertwined that you have apartments right on top of businesses. And it's not like you don't see this sort of thing around here, but it's so much more scarce. When you have as much of it as you do in London or similar places, you get a much more charming environment. All right, I've just got a few holes left in the ceiling, so I'm going to grab some shroom lights to start to fill those in, because if it gets dark, I'll get mob spawning. Something completely unnecessary that I decided to include in my build was the pedestrian ramps, the pedestrian signals, and the bollards. Obviously, this road's not going to have any cars going down it, so there's no need for the type of infrastructure that protects pedestrians, but I think the build is better with the detail anyway. Now, I didn't plan this ahead, but I knew I needed to do something with the back garden and make it look nice. I tried growing a couple of cherry trees, but my problem with the cherry trees is a lot of the designs that we have for them already, I just don't like too much. They look fine in a forest, but most of them look a bit awkward on their own. So I collected the materials and I made my own cherry tree from scratch. Took a little bit of testing to get right, but I'm happy with what I came out with. I thought it would look nice next to a little mossy pond and flowers around, and isn't it just a magic little environment? Now, at this point, I was still really hoping to get my hands on a villager at some point, and someone in chat said that they had one and they gave me some coordinates. It wasn't until a little bit later when they were offline that I was able to go investigate those coordinates, and when I did, unfortunately, I found out that the villagers were sealed away on claimed land where I couldn't operate anything. So I had no way of actually getting the villagers out to take them home. And even if I did, I wasn't sure which ones I was supposed to be taking. So at that point, I resigned myself. I said, okay, the next time this person comes online, I'll ask for their help to get some villagers out for me. And in the meantime, I'll just have to make sure that I have a safe and secure way to get those villagers to my base. So after building a tunnel connecting up our 2 portals, I made some more progress on the outer second level of the base. The finish line seems in sight as I start to add the roof onto one section of the build. Now, the roof does come in a couple of levels, and this is the lower level of the roof. But the idea that I'm almost done making more bricks is great to think about. especially as I headed down into the mines for what I hoped would be my last trip for more clay. And I'm oh so close with the quartz too. Seriously, it feels like I'm just a handful of stairs away from being totally done. At this point I needed some spruce and I didn't have any. But I looked at the mini-map and I saw that my neighbor Sean had just grown a big spruce tree. So I asked him if I could have some saplings, and he didn't answer me. I went over to him and I said, hey, I see you've got a big tree with saplings. Can I have some? And he didn't answer me. So as he ran off, I picked up the saplings because his claim didn't prevent me from doing that. And I didn't want to steal them from him. So I went where he could see me and he didn't see me. Despite my efforts, he only gave me a small nod before running off. I chased after him. I tried to say, hey, look, I've got your saplings, can I please have one? And he didn't seem to know or care, so I just took it. I didn't expect him to be protective of a sapling, but you never know with these things. That was the last thing I needed to finish the wall outside my garden, and he gave my bricks some more time to smelt, so I was able to put the last of those down. Revving up as we get to putting down the last layer of the roof. It was originally going to be a flat solid layer on top, but I realized I could make my wood go further and prevent mob spawning by using bottom slabs instead. Lastly, stuck in some diorite details, and it was done. Well, I mean, that part of it was done. And at that point, it became basically impossible to ignore the fact that I really needed some sea lanterns and I was going to have to get them myself. But step one for that is an enchanting table. I asked if anyone had one I could use in chat and was gifted one by Afe again. Thank you, Afe. Armed with potions of invisibility and no plan, I went out to go figure out what I was going to do and basically immediately realized that I was fucked. Pretty quickly died to a guardian despite being invisible, and that was actually my first death on the server. So there goes my streak. In my rush back to get my items, I was thinking, damn, sea lanterns don't drop if you don't have silk touch. I wasn't 100% sure how to craft them either. I knew that you needed shards and crystals to make them. And I saw that the lanterns drop crystals, so I thought, maybe without silk touch, the other blocks drop the shards? No luck. I found out the one thing that drops the shards is the guardians. So I am going to have to actually make a farm. But I've made guardian farms before, and you have to drain the whole thing. It takes days. It's something I've done before because I had a lot of spare time to kill. That's not what I'm doing here, I want to move on already. So I used that little brain inside my head to figure out something that was hopefully going to work instead in the meantime. I thought, this is going to be functional. It's not going to be fast, it's not going to be efficient, but it'll work. And in the future, if somebody wants to come in here, because it's unclaimed, if somebody wants to come in here and turn this into an actual farm, then they can be my guest. As long as I have the opportunity to use it to get all the sea lanterns that I want, I am A-okay with someone else coming in here. Whoops, put a big pause on that to fill out the decals in the windows of the Tesco. Now, the real life Tesco has a bunch of posters up on the walls here. I didn't have a fantastic way to emulate that, but I was able to do this cool little thing where on one side, these color blocks look like an abstract piece of art in the window, and on the other side, if you squint, you can imagine they look like produce. Put up the rest of the streetlights and started to carve out a little bit more of the road. I hope to expand that later. I love the idea of having neighbors eventually along my street here, but that's for later on. Now, the thing about this being my starter base, it's not in the shopping district, so even though it's modeled after 2 stores, it can't really be a store. I don't think that's allowed. And it's my starter base. It's the place where I'm living. But then I got an epiphany. The Tesco, with all of its shelves, would be the perfect place to store all my shit. And I can label it and sort it, and I can put decorations on the shelves to indicate what's in the chests. It'd be a super clever way, right, to have labeled storage that looks like an intentional, lived-in environment instead of looking like a Minecraft chest room. You know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, another thing that takes up a decent chunk of space, but not too much, is a smelter. And you know what the Greg's is? A bakery, the perfect place to put my ovens. Armed with a plan, I got to work. I went off and got myself some acacia wood from the savannah, and weird thing, on the way back, I just randomly picked up a chest and a minecart, and I had to stop and kind of double take. I have no idea where that came from, but it's mine now. Okay, I really need these sea lanterns, so back at the Guardian farm. It's a really rudimentary design. There's no soul soil involved or anything like that. I'm literally just making basically a whirlpool that leads into a little hole. So it's not going to get all of the Guardians, but any of the ones that happen to swim in that area are eventually going to get pushed down into the hole and they'll fall down and die. So again, it's really not the most efficient thing in the world, but it's functional for my purposes for now. After I came back from AFKing there for a while, Cool Boy came boy. He came boy to say hi. Cool Boy came by to say hi, and he complimented my base, and he said that he liked the road thing and that he's probably gonna be my neighbor, so that's kind of fun. Hey, I said that earlier. I said I wanted neighbors, and I'm gonna have one. Cool, boy. So I went offline and creative, and at long last created a plan for the interior of the apartment and got started on it. This is something that's much more enclosed with smaller details, so it's a lot harder to time lapse. I'll have to walk you through it. In the meantime, you can watch me struggle on the outside of my base, where, because I still don't have Silk Touch, the only way that I can get podzol in this path is to grow a 2x2 spruce tree, cut it down, and dig the podzol out of all the places that I don't want it. Ain't that efficient? Now at this point, getting in and out of my cow pen was getting really obnoxious because every time I open the door, they're crowding the door trying to push their way out. I don't know why their AI tracks over there exclusively. But either way, it was time to build a Bantaro patented orphan crusher. This is something I have built before. Not quite this design exactly. In fact, I messed it up the first time using those slabs. They were not crushed by the slabs, but I fixed it later. And now I've got a much easier way to get myself some beef and leather without it being so obnoxious. Now this section over here really sucks because I actually had to tear my whole garden down just to be able to get this tree to grow so I could get the podzol I needed. I had to capture my garden in light Matica, grow the tree, strip the podzol, and then put my garden back together. Now I was just minding my own business working on my house when I got shot at by a freaking blaze. And this is not the first time this has happened. I've had mobs wandering through my nether portal since I built it, but it was time to put a stop to it because my house is made of wood and they're going to burn it down. I blocked it off with some doors and I don't like the way that it looks, but it'll work for now. I'll have to come up with something a little prettier. I'm surprised that these don't go well together. They're all oak. Oak doors, oak trapdoors. Maybe it's a lighting glitch. After that, I got tired of mining sugarcane by hand because I would always forget to do it on a regular basis, and so I never really had very much. An automated sugarcane farm is something I'm very familiar with, but I didn't really have enough materials to do a full version, so I just kind of got it started, and it'll idly get me some sugarcane at a really slow rate until I have the time to fill this out a little better. And I wanted to add another homely little detail to my back garden, so I put up this clothesline. And would you look at that? That's actually all of the replay footage that I have. I mean, except for the stuff I'm recording right now. It's so hard to walk around in F5, but I think I can just render this and replay in F5 and play in first person. So I'm just staring at the sky right now, but you can see my face. Now, I actually wasn't able to go over quite everything. Most of what I did was in my replay recordings, but some things got left out, so I can go over the final details. One thing that didn't get included was the banners that I put on the front of the building. Look at it. Doesn't it look so good? I've got hanging signs, I've got banners. It's really just the cherry on top to properly have the logos on there. Here's the inside of the Greg's. I need to put drinks inside the fridges still, but you can see I got all of the sea lanterns. Here's the display case with the bread, and I've moved all of my ovens in here. Inside the Tesco, I've got all of my storage. Some of it's a little sparse, but some of it's pretty well filled out. I've got all my wood over here, and here's that produce I talked about earlier. You've already seen my back garden. I still have this as a combo of oak and cherry. I think I'm gonna change it all to cherry, but I might want to play with putting some mangrove in there too. I don't know. I'll have to see what it looks like. And then I can finally take you on a little tour of the inside of the apartment. Here's the foyer. I think that for what it is, it came out really cute. We've got entrances to the Greg's here. This is the entrance to the Tesco. This is my mine. And then the real home is upstairs. Over here, we've got this door and this door go out to the crops. I've got a cozy little fireplace here. I should probably put some things around it, but you know, I'll fill it out as I go. You've seen this, but tucked over here's my bedroom. This is my enchanting area. I've got all my bookshelves now, thanks to the orphan crusher. I don't have villagers yet, but when I do get them, this is where they're going to go. This is where I move my nether wart. I put a window here. And you've seen the sugarcane farm. It's still not done. Wow, 2 whole sugarcane. But that's it, that's everything. I'm gonna keep playing on here, and I might squeeze in a 3rd floor, and I'm hoping to get some neighbors here. I have an idea for another shop to append onto the end, maybe. So we're certainly not done here, but we're at least done for this video. I just want to let you know really quick that I'm going to be out of town at a convention next week. I'm going to Techo in Pittsburgh. Gonna meet up with some friends, gonna have a good time, it's gonna be awesome. But I'm not going to be able to make a video because I'm not gonna be here. So, I hope you enjoyed this. It's kind of unusual, and thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye!